Hi folks, Jennifer Nelson here with Pocket Hours. Pocket Hours is the only podcast made by realtors for realtors. Come listen as I interview high-producing brokers to hear their best practices. And don't forget that while you are listening, you are also earning clock hour credit. Tune in every other week to hear from someone new, and please remember to tell your broker friends about Pocket Hours so more folks can elevate their business. Be the agent you would hire. Looking forward to having you listen in. Hi folks, Jennifer Nelson here with Pocket Hours, and today I had the privilege of interviewing Cherie Hasson. Cherie and I go way back. We used to work at the same office in Mount Baker, and I've been privileged to watch her career just explode over the years. And one of the things we talked about in this interview you're about to hear is that Cherie spends a lot of time making sure that her silent talkers, the notes that she puts up in her listings, as she is an exclusive listing agent, are things that are evocative, things that have a buyer lean in and want to learn more about a house, even uses humor, but makes those worth the time of both her and the buyers looking at them. So she's going to talk a little bit about that. But folks, that's just the tip of the iceberg. This interview was so fun for me. I learned a lot. I took a bunch of notes. I hope that is the same experience for you. By the way, if you need any more reason to listen, Cherie Hasson is in the top 3% of brokers in Washington state. She does bang up business, and I can't wait for you to hear from her. Without further ado, here we go. So glad you're on Pocket Hours and excited to talk to you. We've been talking about this interview for like a year-ish.
Yeah.
And just in terms of it kind of coming together finally, and been a big fan of your work and got to work alongside you in the same office for a couple of years there. And now we're still doing this gig.
Yeah.
Look at us. We're still doing real estate.
Yeah.
So this will be fun. I like it. Thanks for being on the show.
To be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you bet. So Cherie, tell us a little bit about, I want to know pre-real estate, pre-realtor Cherie. Like what were you doing before you were a realtor?
I was a realtor before I was a realtor.
Ooh, love it. Okay.
First of all, I had a lot of jobs in life, but everything I have done has informed me for being a great realtor. For example, I was a pizza delivery person. And so
Nice.
when I was living in Magnolia and I was delivering pizzas to Queen Anne and Magnolia, I would be standing on the front porch while the customer was writing their check, would be asking them questions about their home and, sort of looking inside the door to kind of see these beautiful Queen Anne houses and Magnolia homes, driving all around and looking at these homes when I was delivering pizzas. I was a waitress. And when I was a waitress, you have to be able to talk to anybody and you have to be able to carry out what is essentially a transaction from beginning to end with multiple different people and multiple moving parts. And it all has to come off effortlessly or it's a bad experience for the customer or the client at the end of it. I loved my job as a waitress. I loved meeting new people and talking to people and new food and wine and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of marketing jobs. I worked for my father's aviation company. He is an engineer and he tricked out helicopters for news gathering and law enforcement and things like that. And so,
Wow.
I traveled all around and, sang the praises of his products, went to conventions and trade shows, things like that. I worked in the gaming world. So Nintendo licensee company, the coast, so I was on teams where we would put on auctions. And so I worked with a lot of people, worked with the public and that kind of a thing. I also used to, way back in the day when eBay was in its infancy, I used to teach an eBay class and kind of like threw me into it, but it was for Discovery University and enjoyed sort of instructing and teaching and sharing my knowledge. And so every single one of those skills goes into being a good real estate agent. Joke today, I'm not really joking, but I'm still a waitress. I'm still taking your order, but I'm also a general manager, and I'm a therapist, and I'm a ninja, and I'm a
No doubt.
yeah. One of
No
my
doubt.
clients said that I'm one of those people that talks, basically like a hostage negotiator. So
Exactly. And I know that you have a son, so we both know that we have gotten trained by our kids
yeah.
in negotiation too, because they are master negotiators when it comes to getting what they
Oh
want.
yeah,
So
my 10-year-old is truly a master negotiator. He will ask for something and I'll be like, wait, hold on. How much does it cost or whatever it might be? And then he'll engage me and he'll be like, well, it's this. And I'll be like, well, da, 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 da. And he'll be like, he will come up with some brilliant reason. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
okay, let's keep this negotiation going. And he will
Yeah.
always succeed. And I love seeing that.
That's right. Good skill building, right? We're teaching them young. I love it. Well, that's a good segue into tell us a little bit about family and your son and pets and tell us
Sure.
about
Well,
that.
I'm in between pets.
Okay.
I'm a cat woman and a dog woman, but I'm in between pets. My son is he's been my puppy for the last 10 years. Thankfully, he does not have to have a pet right now because I think that would be too much. But that's my pet game, is that we're in between single mom, and it's the me and Knox show. His name's Knox. We together pretty much 24/7, and we have a great time. We live in Seward Park, near Andrews Bay, near the lake. So, we do kayaking and sea-doo. And so that was really more
Nice.
for me than for him. But
I love it.
I love to get out on the lake. It's like a motorcycle on water. And there are days where I love to just like get on it for 45 minutes and just go bananas and, that kind of thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love hearing the different things that realtors do specifically to unwind, because our job is one that can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
And having something, for those of you listening that are new in the field, having something that you can actually get away from it all. So while Cherie's on a Sea-Doo, there's no way she could be doing much of anything else besides being on that machine and being out in nature and on the water.
Yeah.
And there's some healing that comes from that. So
take breaks when I was a new agent. I didn't feel like I could say no to my clients. I put myself last. And so these days, I go do yoga, I go work out, I do these things, and I don't even hide it from my clients these days. And I know that when I'm
nice.
working with somebody where I'm the client and they mention like, oh yeah, okay, after my workout, I can da da da. I think I respect them, because when you say
sure.
that you work out or do something that takes time for just yourself, it's like telling your clients that you respect yourself and that you respect your health, your wellness, your time. And I think I actually respect people more when I know that they're doing that when they work in a field where we are supposed to serve people 24/7.
It's true. Yeah, agreed. I can't tell you how much it mattered to me when I finally started to have that hour of power, that moment where I'm like, I'm not doing anything else except for taking care of myself. And for me, that's boating. I'm out on my boat all the time. Even if it's cold, I start in like March because I'm so excited for the summer to come and I've got a sweater on, but I'm out on the boat.
Yeah.
And that's where I regenerate.
Yeah.
That and exercise help me get focused, right?
Yeah. I see your boating pictures on social media.
Oh, yeah?
And I think another benefit is like when your clients and your people see you, that you're happy and you're fulfilled, even if it's just for that one day. And they know that they're getting like a happy caretaker to guide them through a transaction.
I love it. So what drew you to real estate? Like, you were doing all these other things before. What got you into real estate?
I was in the process of a transaction. My partner and I were in the process of buying a house together, and it was back in early 2002. We'd been shopping since, late 2001. Pre-MLS online. It was really pre-internet in that regard, everything. And different type of skill set of work involved. I wouldn't say there's more work involved. There was just a different type of skill set of work involved in the process. And I actually felt like I was doing more of the work than my realtor was, maybe a little bit.
Okay.
But I enjoyed the work. I liked looking things up and all of these things. And so by the time we closed on the purchase, which was in February of 2002, I had already gotten my license. Like I'd been licensed by the end of it. And then I was just kind of off to the races with it. But what I loved about real estate then, and what I love 21 plus years later, is fulfills like all 17 sides of my personality. You know what I mean? There's never a dull moment. Every client is a snowflake. Every transaction is a snowflake. I mean, no two are alike. Of being needed. Our clients do not reach out to us because they're doing us a favor. They reach out to us because they're in a situation and they need us and they've chosen us. I love to be the hero, and I love to people please and, jump in and help, and save the day. And I think that you and I both know we've been through recessions and all these different real estate cycles. And it's fascinating to see the level of which your clients need you when you start to get into a market correction or a recession. It's hard times. So when they reach out to you, it's serious. And so I love to step in and help out, do what I can.
That's so similar. It's funny. I got into real estate. I was in education before, teaching and dean of students and all the things. And I also bought a house. And in the process of it was like, okay, that kind of hits all my needs of being an educator, being a person of service, and also the sales component, which is actually a very small portion of what we do. People think we're in sales, and sales gets a bad name. But in a lot of ways, I think this is a service business more than a sales business.
Love that you said that, because the last thing I am is a salesperson. I have never referred to myself as a salesperson. I am an advocate. My clients sell me on the property that they want. I largely these days, I work with sellers for the most part. I don't really work with buyers. I have a partner who works with our buyers so that I can focus on things ready for market. But in the first, 17, 18 years of my business, when I was representing buyers, talk them out of houses. I'm sure you've done the same, where,
Totally.
I'm facilitating their journey and I'm listening to them and I'm trailing them as we're touring a house, and I'm watching them react to the place, and I'm seeing, all these signs. And so sometimes you'll have these buyer clients who are talking you, the buyer's agent, into letting them getting this house for them, right? And you'll be like,
Totally.
You psychologically moved too many walls in this house, and you're doing too much remodeling, too many edits. Let's move on. This is not the right place for you. You're compromising. And, trust me when I say there will be one for you. You're just freaking out and thinking there won't be. So you're compromising too much. And, but you're not talking me into it. And so I've talked a lot of people out of buying a place. When I see a place where I'm like, this kind of place doesn't hit very often, and if you don't go for this one, it's going to be another 6 months before the next one like this hits, I will then, I'll say that. But the last thing I am is a salesperson.
Totally. I often liken real estate to dating, because I think there's so many crossovers with my clients. Even at the beginning, when we're doing a buyer consultation or a listing appointment, I talk about being monogamous. This isn't an open relationship. We joke like that. But also, it's funny when you're talking about, this, you're psychologically taking down too many walls. It's like the friend in your life who says, but they're just such a nice person. I mean, I know they have a drinking problem, and I know this, but hey, what about this? And you're like, wait a minute, let's back this train up. Let's not settle for that person or that house, right? So, okay, so you get into the industry and some 21 years ago, and did you feel like you had a concept from your past lives of doing your work of just being really service oriented? Did you feel fish out of water? Did you feel scared to death that you weren't going to make it? Talk to me a little bit about what was happening at the beginning of your career.
I feel like I really hit the ground running because I was lucky enough to have at least 2 or 3 people in my sphere who were like, hey, would you hurry up and get your license so you can list our condo or help us go shopping? And I find that happens with a lot of new agents that I've seen. But then after you help those first 3 or 4 people who were sort of waiting for you or, your license, then it might dry up, and I've always found that, my experience was that you're mostly working with buyers, houses and all that kind of thing. You're not really representing sellers yet. And I was very tenacious. Knew that this was the career for me. I could just feel it. It just felt great. So even when I didn't have any active clients or anything active going on, I was always going into the office and just, I don't know, getting online and looking at properties or putting marketing stuff together or things like that. 1 year mark was really when I started to hit my stride. And it's when I had a couple of big listings where I could really go all in and show what I was made of. And then, from there, it kind of kept going.
I love it. I love it. And for new agents listening to this call, I wanted you to hear one specific thing that she said, which is she went into the office and she treated this like a job as a career because it is one. And so we've talked about this before on the show, but people that treat this like a hobby get paid like a hobby, and people that treat this like a career get paid like a career, right? So if you're working and you're like, well, I just don't have any clients, so I'm going to, binge Netflix today, or I'm going to go whatever. And that's the majority of your week is sort of waiting for your phone to ring. It won't ring. Right? We know this. You actually have to go and find the business, look for the business, be at the office. And so learn from others that are doing it. I love that you said that. So take me now to, let's say you're about 3 to 4 or 5 years in. You've definitely hit your stride, but is there any time that you remember plateauing? Meaning, right, you're, okay, I've hit this level of income. I can't seem to break out of it. And maybe that's not true for you, but first of all, has that happened to you in your 21 years?
My knee-jerk reaction to that, Jen, is to say, no, that has not happened to me. It's not to say I haven't gone months without a transaction closing and a paycheck.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I always had stuff in the hopper, I guess you could say, things that I knew were going to come to fruition. And I started to learn that can be a marathon. It can be a long game.
But I want to focus in on something you just said. She just said that there's been times in her career where months went by where there was no paycheck. And that is true for every single realtor that I've ever interviewed or known, that there has been moments in time where there isn't a closing. But what you know from previous years of experience and your ability to believe is that because you've done good work, that more work will come, because people will eventually refer you if you've served them well. Can you say more comments about why you weren't worried in the months that you didn't have a paycheck?
And also, just really quick on what you just said, is that 1 year in, I still always worry if my phone is ever going to ring again. And I never take this business for granted, and I never take this market for granted. And I never take our wonderful city of Seattle or King County, our region, for granted. Of my colleagues who I talk to, they're the same way. Like, they freak out on January 2nd if their phone doesn't ring. And so I will always respect that. And I've always been kind of a workaholic. And so once I got into real estate, I loved it. And another thing I love about real estate is that it's what you make it. So, especially these days with social media and technology and all of that, which didn't even really exist back then in the same way. It's like, if you get a clever idea and you put it out there, you never know, you could get something off of it. But funny, because back then I had to go to a party because I couldn't wait to drop that I was a real estate agent, because everybody loves to talk about real estate at parties. And so I would walk away with so many names or things like that. And what's kind of ironic these days is when I go to a party, which is rare, I really go there to just be at a party. And so the last thing I do is say that I'm a real estate agent. And usually it's the person who invited me who's like, oh, ask Cherie, she's an agent, because someone usually is talking about real estate at a party.
Yep, that's true.
But I'm sorry, Jen, get me back on track to your last
no, that's okay.
question.
As you were talking to me, we're all over the map. By the way, there's a bunch of realtors that have ADD. So just so you know, I'm one of them. I don't know if Cherie's one of them too. So that's why some of these conversations are going to go all over the place. But one of the things I remember about working in the same office with you that I always admired was your level of detail and service to those clients. So let me give you an example. And this will surprise you because it stood out to me, but I've never said it to you. You had a client that closed on a transaction, if I remember right, and then you sent out a card that you'd made, and it was a photo from a movie where there was a Annette Bening, or I can't remember. She was right now, you're laughing. Yeah. It was a crazy realtor, which, by the way, in movies and TV shows, realtors are always nuts. By the way, if you haven't noticed that yet, go back. There's crazy realtors in movies. But you had captured
Passionate.
some line. Okay, there we go. You'd captured some line that she'd said,
Will
and
sell
that
this house.
was
I will sell this house.
there it is. See, I knew you knew it. And then you sent that as the card to this client or to several clients or whatever. And it was specific, it was unique, it was humorous. And we all were like, oh my gosh, why didn't we think of that? But that's sort of, I think, some of what you bring to the table is that you have an eye for marketing and for being specific and personal in that marketing.
Thank you.
Can you talk?
I'm glad you
Yeah.
remembered that. It's a great point. You said being specific and personal. I would add the adjective hyperbolic. You know, you're doing
Okay.
something that's making an impression on somebody, that's landing with them,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
evocative. You're evoking something from somebody. It is all about emotions and connecting with these human beings that are behind the transactions. With regard to the Annette Benning card, so I had a bunch printed that were actual, like a greeting card that you would get, and I would actually send them out. Or I even started with a seller client. So once I got the job, once they said, you're hired to sell my house, I would snail mail them this card. And yeah, on the cover was this screen grab of Annette Benning just like furiously scrubbing something. It's a hilarious photo. And it would say, I will sell this house. I will sell this house. And then inside of it, I would say, you know, looking forward to selling your house. I mean, I keep it real simple. And what's funny is I still have a ton of those cards, but I never mail them out anymore because nobody gets the reference because it was from so long ago. You know what I mean? I need to find a more current thing.
There's plenty of other, what did I say? Crazy. You said passionate actors portraying realtors in movies that we could grab.
They're not really doing us any favors. but another one, Jen, since you brought that up, like way back in the day, George Carlin had a bit on buying houses, and he would say, like, you know, the reason you buy a house is because you need your stuff. So I would do kind of a quip on that, and I would send that. I think that was like part of my, you know, email auto signature or something like that. But the point of all that, Jen, that you're bringing up, for me, what I've employed my whole time is always doing something unique that would sort of set me apart. And so when social media came along, when Facebook came along, gosh, it was like you could remind everybody that you're practicing and that you got a listing or you put a sold strip up for some buyers that you helped buy. But the book was personal. It wasn't a business. So I would never say, come see me at my open house this weekend. That was too, everybody says that, you know, so I would find a different way to talk about the listing that was hyperbolic, that was almost like a joke or a play on something like, congratulations to Ben and Melissa for buying this giant hedge in the house that's behind it, or you know what I mean? Something like that.
Right.
And so, because anybody who's friends with me on Facebook or social media knows me, they probably know my personality a little bit, and I'm just a little bit left of center. And so I wanted all to this day, like my mentions and my marketing to be a little bit left of center because you get bored of the same old message.
You sure do. Yeah. And for people that are joining the industry or even people that are in it, boy, take heed to that advice to say, if you're going to post something, think about whether it represents you and your personality and that it's not just something real estate related for real estate, because that is boring and it will cross over it. I can think of names, which I will not mention right now to protect the guilty, that I don't even look at their page anymore because all it is them tooting their own horn about real estate. And boy, I can tell you, if it's hitting me that way, it's likely hitting your clients that way too. Yeah. And so,
you know, a kind of a funny thing about, speaking of Facebook, is that, again, to a long time ago, I felt like I just have to present as a 24/7 realtor all the time. And I can't, there's any other part of my life that for the longest time in my career, I told myself I couldn't do that. And formula for Facebook, if you go way back, you'll see the formula, and it's literally like real estate post, real estate post, real estate post, knocks, real estate post. You know what I mean? It was like 3 to 1 because I didn't want to be one of those people who posts 100 pictures of their kid all the time, because I didn't want people to think, oh, she's a mom to a young child. I don't want to bug her. I don't want to pull her out of the house to come unlock a door and show me a property or, you know, list my property. That was my biggest fear back in the day. And so I was born, I just put a little post and said, "Say hello to my little friend," and that was like it. And, the irony is everybody loves pictures of Knox, and that's what gets the most engagement.
Always,
but then, of
always.
course, when he got a little bit older, as I'm sure you have experienced, it's fun to take them to a listing and have him put up the sold strip or have him, water the plants or whatever. And so that's a fun way to do a post that shows you're a mom, you're a working mom, you've got a kid, and you learned that anybody who is already a parent or a woman, a single mom, any of that, they love to support their sisters out there.
Absolutely.
They love that you're a mom and you're doing your own thing. And so, or like if you're a dog person or whatever, they love all of that. So that changed a long time ago, and I'm glad that I did.
Absolutely. And you and I share that, both single moms. And I think what I've also found is that Ruthie, my daughter, comes first. And so the sooner my clients know that, the easier our transaction is going to go. And it's not to say that they're not going to get exceptional service, but they do need to know that if push comes to shove, they are second for sure. And it's interesting, like you said, as people respond and react to that, it gets me more points and gets our relationship more solidified the sooner they learn that.
Yeah, because you have the self-respect to like draw the line and say, like, here's what I stand for. And we like to hire people that have, that kind of a constitution. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so talk to us a little bit about the realtors that are listening to this podcast are looking to hear from masters. And in case you didn't know, that's what you're considered. So the only reason you're on the show and we're invited to the show is because I believe that you have a lot to share other realtors. Tell them about some best practices, some things that you do that you think they can learn from, that you think help make you productive. So now you've transitioned into being mostly just a listing agent. You've got a partner that deals with buyers. What do you think that you do on the regular that gets you business or keeps you in business? Talk to us a little bit about productivity. Pocket Hours is brought to you by Scout Real Estate. Hi, I'm Jennifer Nelson, owner at Scout Real Estate. I started this firm with the vision of doing things differently, with our focus on legendary service for our clients and creating a community of producing agents to spur each other to do higher quality work. If you are interested in learning more about how a small group of like-minded brokers have come together to have some fun while doing a lot of business, reach out to me, 206-227-7966, or email jennifer@scoutrealestate.com. I promise you this, fun is a high priority for me, but so is winning. So if you appreciate those two things, you might be interested in Scout. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Steal a phrase that I heard somebody who works with corporate Starbucks say, I give legendary service.
Love it.
I mean, it's almost not even about the client. It's about serving myself, which could be ego or pride or whatever you want to call it. But, this far into the game, I'm really doing it for myself. And the good news is that the trickle down effect is that a listing gets a ton of offers and gets bid up so high that we know that we got every penny out there. And I live for that. I live for the adrenaline of it and everything. But also I'm very focused on listings. Answering your question will be will be listing specific. But so here's the thing. I have accepted the fact that I cannot control what's happening in the market or the economy at any given time. And I can't control the location of where a listing is located. It frustrates me. I wish I could control all of those things. So I'll be darned if I'm going to leave anything else to chance. So if I can manipulate the way the place presents, things I'm kind of known for are my note cards, or as in Windermere culture, we call it the silent talkers. And everyone has seen note cards in houses, but I'm not talking about the note card that's on the wall of the living room that says oak floors. Like pretty much everybody knows what an oak floor looks like. I'm not trying to call out the obvious. I'm trying to call out the potential of things. So for example, if it's a split level, 1970s, that classic floor plan, you've got the kitchen enclosed with a corner wall. And, house flippers love to go in and rip that wall out and put in an island. And so people touring, whether they're buyers or even agents, sometimes may not be able to visualize that. And so I'll go grab, an image of what it looks like with that wall taken out. And I'll print it large with the color photo. And I'll say, consider removing this wall, and open it up and show a picture. And of course, in small print, I'll be like, talk to an architect first. But,
Yeah.
or if when you're standing at a window and you look into the backyard and you kind of can't tell where the property line is, the seller will say the property line extends 15 feet beyond the fence. I'll have a sign at the window that says, seller says that the property line extends 15 feet beyond the fence, because when they're standing there, they might be wondering if you have more property downslope or something like that. So I like to get in your head and ask and answer the question before you even have a chance to think it. And then I like to do it in my voice. And sometimes it's playful or funny. And so the funny thing is that when I'm at an open house, I really don't talk a lot. I let all my note cards do the talking for me. And, I find that buyers these days, when they tour open houses, they keep everything close to the vest, most of them. And it's like when you walk into a retail store, these days, you're just like, I'm good, when the salesperson comes up to you. So I'm just pretty silent. And by the time they're done touring the whole property, my note cards have broken the ice with them. They've gotten a feel for my personality. I've made them laugh. I've gotten inside their head and answered a question. And they usually break the ice by saying, I love your note cards. They're so great. And I'll always say, is there something I didn't answer, and whatever. And so back to your big question, Jen, about like, what kind of practices do you do to further your business? I get so many people off of my note cards. I really do. I once gave a talk at my office. I called it like the $30 million silent talker, the $30 million note card. And what I meant was I literally traced it to some people I met off of an open house who I didn't really talk to when they came in, and engaged me after they toured all my note cards. And then I sold their Queen Anne townhouse, helped them buy $1 million place. They told their friends, and I traced all the transactions I got from them. And it was because of my note cards, period.
I love it.
So
I love
my
that
note
so
card
much.
game is on
Yeah.
fleek. But also I will say that I just leave nothing to chance with my listings. And so I've learned to be a little more hands off these days, where I'm truly like either hiring yard people or having my clients, prescribing my clients to hire yard people. But there were times where I'd come with my own pruners and like trim a rhododendron down so it's not blocking a window. And so what's funny is, and I do have my own inventory and I do stage certain listings myself, although these days more and more I'm hiring the pros to do it. But neighbors. So with my listings, the neighbors would see this girl drive up in her minivan and get out and like work on the yard. So they'd think I'm the yard person. And then they'd see me hand trucking like furniture in, and they'd think I was the stager. And I wouldn't out myself until the listing's ready to go. And the second my name's on the sign and the listing is live, and now I'm dressed up at the open or whatever, that's when I'd meet them and introduce myself. And they're like, wait, you're the same one who was, throwing mulch down or,
Yeah.
sod or carrying this stuff. And like, they would all say like, I didn't know a realtor does that. And I would say, not a lot of them do, and they'd say, can I
Exactly.
get your card, kind of thing. And then 10 days later, however many days later, there's a sold strip on that sign. And they are like, wow, full circle moment. And so many of my listings, if they're not referral, they come from a neighbor who saw me give legendary service, and they want that.
I like that. Couple things. One, I want to go back just for a minute to the thing that you talked about in terms of the legendary service and sort of the game in and of itself for you, which is to say, how can I get better than I already am today? What can I do for my client today that's better than I did for my last client? And always upping your game. And sort of the game of that, it's like a secret joke with yourself. Like no one else even has to be part of this game. It's within yourself to say, how good can I get, right? And I think we're both competitive people, and I think some competitive people are drawn to this industry. So make a game, brokers, that you're the contestant and that you are trying to always beat yourself at your own game. Get better and better and better, right? We love that. And I also love that you talked about Not afraid of working hard. I mean, we've heard that over and again with these top producers as I interview them, but being able to say, I'm not too good for, the second you say I'm too good for something, you've lost it, right? You've already lost the ability to say, I'll get my hands dirty, I'll move this, I'll throw some mulch, I'll mow a lawn. Back in 2006, I was mowing a lawn for a client before an open. And the neighbors walked over and said the same thing. They're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
aren't you the realtor? Aren't you the realtor? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, it appears I'm mowing a lawn. And they laughed and said, I've never heard of an agent that does that. And I'm like, well, nice to meet you. I do. Right. And then I said, hey, but I don't wash windows. Like you make some joke about like, hey, there's a line somewhere. Right. But there's something to say when something needs to be done. And I know it's going to impact how this sale goes, that you're not afraid to do it, that you step in and do that.
Well, and I'll go you one further, Jen. Post pandemic, in the pandemic, we all wore sweatpants, and we didn't wear hard pants anymore. We didn't dress up, whatever. And I've always been a sweats kind of girl. And literally, when I go to listing appointments these days, where I'm just like, who am I today? Like as I'm getting dressed to go out of the house, do you know what I mean? I'm being like, well, who am I today? Obviously, who are the clients? Who do I want to present myself as? And I'm telling you, every single time recently, I've grabbed the athleisure wear. And I'm like, you know what? I'm wearing my really nice sneakers and I'm wearing my really cool, kind of yoga pant, black leggings, whatever. And I've got a really cool, it's all about the jacket or whatever. But I'm literally dressing comfortably as myself. It's, the elevated version. So it's not the sweatpants that have the paint on them and the shoes that are filthy dirty. But just the past year, I've told myself, that's who you are. That's what you do. And when I get to the listing and they're walking me into the backyard and there's, potholes because the dog's torn it up or there's something you have to climb. If I was wearing 3-inch heels or whatever. I mean, actually, I still could climb in the 3-inch hills, but why? Why do that? Because it's not me. And if I'm hiring somebody for a job, I don't want somebody because they're fancy. I don't want to be reminded that I'm paying for their really nice car when I hire them. If they want to spend their money on the really nice car, that's great, or whatever is valuable to them. But I don't want it in my face. That doesn't impress me. I want someone that's results oriented is going to put me first.
Absolutely. I interviewed 3 or 4 brokers that were high listing agents. We had them on a panel, and 3 of them came with their very fancy listing presentations and the lamination and the this and the notebook and oh my gosh. And one of them showed up. He actually sold way more houses than the rest of them. And here's why. He showed up with 2 pieces of paper that he'd scribbled all over. And that was his CMA. And he sat down with a client and he said, here, I've researched this to the death. And I've been in these houses. This is why yours is different. Here's my notes. Here's this. And at the end of the day, he said, I don't want them to almost feel like this is dog and pony show where here's all my pretty, look at me over here. I want them to feel so confident that I am really zeroing in on this number and show them my work. Like it's the math class, right? Like how'd you get to that answer? Show me your work, right? So I can learn how to do it. But same to what you're saying. It's like who shows up needs to be you authentically, and it needs to be you ready to work and do some things to show that legendary service.
Reminded me of something that I want to share is that is one of my practices to a listing appointment is I will set the table, if you will. And I've done my research. I've got their address. I've looked up the last time the place sold, if it's been on the market in recent years, all that kind of thing. I've just done all of my stuff. And so I'll send them an email a day or 2 ahead of our appointment that just covers like my history, townhouse listing walkthrough. I'll show them all the townhouses I've listed and sold, all the listings and sales I've done within a tight radius of their house or something like that. So I'll hit all these marks so they know, okay, I've had a lot of listings around their place. I've done a ton of condos or whatever it might be. Track record of my listings for 2023 thus far so that they could see that, oh, she's been practicing a lot. She hasn't just done like 1 a month. She's done, however many. And here's the days on market column and, the sale price to the list price column. So I'll send all of that in, whether they read it or not, a couple of days before our meeting, so that when we get together, we can kind of hit the ground running. We can focus on them, not me, because they already know about me. And we could talk about the house and their timing and what's going on in their life that causes them to even need to sell in the first place. Back to what you're saying about the agent who comes in with a couple pieces of paper and scribbling. I like to joke that, in some of the movies, like somebody will go rob a bank with a ballpoint pen, kind of the joke. Do you know what I mean? Like back in the old days, like they just have like a ballpoint pen in their pocket and they robbed a bank. I mean, that's basically what I do. I go in with my iPhone, that's on silent that I don't even grab while I'm in the meeting. But I mean, I couldn't do that back in the day. When I was a new agent, I needed all that extra stuff. But what I learned at some point was it's literally about the eye contact. It's literally about doing your homework, knowing your subject matter, sitting down and just having a conversation with those people. You shouldn't have to refer to anything. You shouldn't have to look away. When I'm in those listing appointments, if I've set the table beforehand, I can just say, that email I sent you, it's in there, kind of a thing. And then they're like, oh, cool. And then we keep talking. And so that connection becomes really strong because you're not like, oh, you're scrabbling through stuff and flipping through and whatever. You're just looking them in the face and you have the confidence to about what you're doing. And that's what they're hiring, I think.
Agreed. This morning at Scout, the brokerage that I own, we were going over the buyer consultation. And it's so interesting you bring up this point because we have the process that they use, the questions that they ask in a buyer consultation. And one of the things we highlighted today was that the more they repeat that process, pretty soon they're not even looking at their notes, because what we want them to do is get so familiar with the kinds of questions that connect with a buyer or a seller that they're connecting with a buyer or seller. Does that make sense? So it's less about the formula and more about you getting better and more confident in what questions really matter so that you can then look them in the eye and connect on an authentic level and read the room and all the things that take a lot of brain power that if you're focused on a sheet of paper and covering the questions, you miss out on the gold and the meat of the moment, if you will. Yeah.
But
that's great.
Your packet is going to look like everybody else's packet. It might have a different company name on it or whatever, but it's all, one size fits all that you've selected and assembled for this one meeting. I mean, I've never even used a CMA that either my company, produces on their website or the MLS lets you use. My CMAs look like everybody else's. And I've lost a couple of listings for that reason. There are people out there who want all of that. And if you don't bring that in, they're sort of like, they think you're missing the mark. No one said that to my face, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of someone's decision,
And the beauty behind that, and listeners, I hope you pick this up, is that Cherie isn't thinking, oh no, I should have grabbed every single listing I go to interview for, because at the end of the day, there are your clients and then there are clients for other people. Thank God. We really appreciate that we don't have to get every single listing. We want to connect with the right people there at the right time. So, okay, switching gears just a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about what's made you productive, some tricks in the trade, your silent talkers or your notes, your legendary service. That sets you apart is that you're willing to get your hands dirty and work hard. And so you're cruising along and you're loving the business, but there have to be days that you say, what the hell? I can't stand real estate. I don't like these people, or whatever it is. What do you not like about what you do? What about this business?
There's a couple of things that really get me. Number one, resent. I downright resent that the whole world, that the general public knows how much money we make. Because here's the thing, whole world, you don't know how much money we make. We don't make the money that you think we make. We have never made the money that you think we make. So shows like $1 Million Listing, which I love on Bravo, New York, LA, any of the locations, one of the only real estate related reality shows that I like and watch, but I
Yeah.
do learn from those shows. But they'll sit there and show that Friedrich in New York got a $30 million listing, and then they'll splash across the screen, and they'll even write Friedrich's commission. And then it'll be like 2% or 3% of the number, whatever it is, for a $30 million listing. But it'll be this massive number. And if you are Joe Schmo sitting at home in America watching this, you're like, oh my God, that's like more than I make in a year, kind of a thing. It's like, no, further down is that, that money goes to our brokerage. They're differing, they're not one size fits all. And there's the trickle down to the actual agent who worked the transaction. And that's before the agent pays taxes on it and all their stuff. So it is an opportunity to make good money if you work hard and apply yourself and really, sow your garden all these years, but do not make the kind of money that people think. And so here's the other thing I resent about that is you do not know how much doctors make. You do not know how much lawyers make. You do not know how much career professionals who work in a practice make. And we're like the only ones. We're the only ones.
That's true.
And
That's true.
it misleads people. And the other thing that disturbs me is that, although we could all do something about it, is our industry does not have a mouthpiece, does not have like a PR who's letting the whole world know what good brokers do in the course of a transaction. And when I say that I can do something about that, if I had the time or if I took the time, as a buyer's agent or as a seller's agent, I could do a website or a social media campaign to show all the things that I do, all the things that you do, Jen, when a transaction goes sideways. I'm thousands of dollars into a listing personally before it even hits the market. And that is by way of photography. That's by way of staging. If I'm paying for it, it's by way of things. And that's my skin in the game. But nobody knows about that. My clients do, obviously, because I tell them that's part of my value. But I understand that the public as a whole views us as these crazy real estate agents like you see depicted in so many movies.
That's true. Yeah.
And that they wonder what we do to earn our huge amount of money that we get, supposedly, because they don't know, because we don't educate them.
That's
never
very true.
ending. I've almost wanted to create like a website where agents could just write in anonymously and say like how a transaction went sideways and what they did to fix it. But anyway, the other thing that gets me, Jen, that drives me crazy are the online valuations. The quote, and I'm air quotes, the online valuations. Not around before probably 2007. Become, a staple. And I get it. I understand it. Hey, I even look up the value of my own house as well from time to time, or I'll get served the value because those companies will email you. Hey, your property just went up, 20% since the last quarter. Who isn't going to click on that and look at it and want to believe it if it's good or not believe it if it's bad? And so one thing I do, part of my research before I go to a listing appointment, is I look up what the top couple of companies are saying about the value of the home that I'm about to go look at. Because even though I don't use those as a determiner of value, I know that my clients are going to have those numbers in their head. And I'm always curious to see the top two, who I won't name, of how close they are to each other or how far apart. As you know, sometimes they're fairly close to each other. Other times they're $200,000 apart from each other. And that's not even looking at their range, which is in the small print. They'll give you one specific number, but if you scroll down, you'll see that they have a range, and their range is like $200,000 apart. And so it's like, okay, y'all, which one is it? Which website's the more right one? And then which part of the range is more right? And that's kind of a talking point that I use, because they acknowledge that. It's funny because every single person I'll talk to in a listing appointment will say, oh yeah, we've seen them, but we don't, we know that they don't matter. And it's like, I explain to them why it doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter is because that data is from a closed transaction, and a transaction doesn't typically close until 30 days after you got mutual acceptance. It's back when you got mutual acceptance, when the market stepped up and voted what they think your house is worth at this moment in time. It is more reliable than any appraisal. It is more reliable than any online valuation or anything. But that value could even be different, higher or lower, 30 days later when the transaction actually closes. than when it did. And those websites don't get a hold of that data until that 30th day. And then they plug it into their, algorithm and spit out a new number. It's just like tax assessed value. It always lags. So when the market's going up, your tax assessed value is always way lower, which is awesome because we're paying taxes on that amount. So let's have it be low. And then when, we're in a market correction, the tax assessed value is always higher than what your market value is. So, I always say that real estate is an art and a science. Selling houses is an art and a science. It's luck and gut and all of these things, but it's not what a computer says a place is worth. Take it to the bank, cash it in if that's the case.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I love, there you go. Get it, girl. What I love too is I say, hey, let's look up your value right now on Redfin. Ooh. And let's say it says 1.2. Okay. But I know from the data and research that I've looked at that they're really 1.4. Okay. Let's even say 1.5. Let's say Redfin got it wrong that much, but in that market, they do often. And then we list it at 1.5. Guess what Redfin now says it's worth? 1.6. Like they went from $400,000 spread in a 24-hour period after I said it's worth this, because it's an algorithm that's picking up on this and that. Now it's going to go support that data by finding other homes that are 1.5 that they weren't looking at before. Yeah. Right. So I say, watch this. Whenever I push go, I'm like, now go look at your Redfin value. Right.
Yeah. So I love that you do that. That's really awesome. And that's why once you've been in the business long enough and you've had enough listings under your belt, let's say, that I always rely on my track record. I'm always say, look at my track record, because in our industry, besides everybody allegedly knowing what we make, we are also one of the only industries where our track record could be public. I mean, the public can't yet log into the MLS and look up our track records, but I always encourage home sellers to, ask agents that they're interviewing is to have them do a printout of, their last however long, a year or 6 months or whatever, of listing sales. And I'm very proud of my track record. In terms of days on market, it's very consistent. So I can sit there and say, don't take my word for it. Look at the data. And, you can't necessarily do that in a lot of businesses. Can I tell you one other thing that irks me about the business that I love so much? Please. Some of the discount brokerages out there will put a billboard up or, slather it along a bus that says, if you go with us, you'll sell for more than the house next door. I love it. It's catchy. It rhymes, but it's based on nothing. It's like you would have to sell the same house twice on the same day with two different agents or two different companies to see if they were right about what they're pledging. Sell for more than the house next door. Well, also the house next door isn't for sale, by the way. And also it's probably a different style.
Totally.
And has different updates. So why would you even go out there and say that unless someone in your marketing team has no experience with real estate? They're just hired to be like a social media marketeer, and they like that it rhymes maker. And that it's catchy, and why not?
Let's go for it. Yeah. It's playing to the lowest common denominator of intellect, that's for sure. And I do bring that up in listing appointments too. Like these people are going for base here, and what we don't want base, we don't want average, we want well above it. So that takes a level of expertise and a level of nuance that we really want to get into, because we want to bring the best buyer to the property. We just don't want it to be another transaction that closes.
And here's the thing, Jen, it's like we're all do-it-yourselfers, we're all do-it-yourselfers, and we all want to save a buck. And so I get that, and I respect that so much. I carry that into my listing appointments, and it's like everyone is so focused on how much they'll save if they maybe a discount broker or something like that. So they're not focused on how much more they'll make if they work with an experienced professional who does this every day and knows what they're doing. And my only or whatever is, let's just say you're getting a divorce.
See? Relationship analogy.
And
I love it.
Your life is in the hands of your divorce attorney. And everything about the future of your life depends on the outcome of how this experienced professional handles you. Are you going to hire a divorce attorney so you can save a buck because they're the cheapest hourly rate? Are you going to take a recommendation from somebody who just went through it and said, this is the person that's going to be your North Star and get it done and blah, 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 and then you find out how much they're charging, but you're paying for their experience. You're paying for the fact that this is not their first rodeo. and that they're not discounting what they do. They value themselves. They know what they're worth, and they are confident enough to give you that. So there's your analogy. And you can say that for a doctor. I should have used the doctor analogy, but that's when it makes sense. You'd never hire a cut rate, or doctor on purpose,
It's
if
true.
you
Not
had
on
the
purpose.
ability.
One of my mentors said to me at one point, experience matters, and here's why. You don't care if your pilot is trained in how to deal with a bad situation in air until it's in air and it's a bad situation. So people don't hire us because the transaction is going to go easy. They hire us in case it doesn't go easy, that we'll know how to handle it, right? So that's where that experience really comes into play. And I want to do a caveat here for people listening to this show that are saying, that's cool, Cherie has a bunch of listings, Jennifer, they've been around a long time, la, la, la. What do I do in a listing appointment when I don't have the track record of showing how many homes I've sold, how many townhomes? How do I demonstrate my value when I'm new at this? And do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. And thank you for presenting me with that question, because when you're new, all you have is that you're going to work hard and that you're really going to appreciate this. And this is your opportunity to show them what you can do. I mean, that's what you have when you're new. And that's a lot. That means a lot to people. A lot of agents in the business that are just sort of coasting and phoning it in or otherwise distracted, and good for them because they probably worked really hard at other periods and served their people well. And maybe they just need a break or they're going through something. But when you get that hungry, broker who is just going to go the distance, appeal to that. So don't hide that. Put it front and center. They're probably already going to kind of know, and what I always used to do when I was new, and what I always say to newbies is, like, when you're literally your first month, at your brokerage or whatever, say that you're in your first year, say that you're in your second year, because it sounds more than what it is. And it's not lying. But go all in and be that person. I can remember vividly a couple of times where I did that and they hired me specifically for that point. And all you need, new agents, is one of those listings. And then when you get that listing, all in. And here's what I mean by all in. I had a colleague once who was new, and they got their first listing, and it was a condo, and the owners had moved out. So it was this vacant place, and this didn't want to pay for staging. And so this agent was acting like, well, I guess we'll just do the best we can. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is an opportunity. You get out there. If you don't have extra money, use your own furniture. Empty your living room. Borrow, beg, steal. Get on Craigslist. Go driving through alleys and find, stage that place. Get a vision for what you want it to look like and bring the vision to life and make it happen. Even if you have to go buy it all and return it.
Yeah.
Buy it all and return it. But do that. And then shoot the hell out of your listing. Like, photograph it, especially these days with social media. Do videos of you there getting it ready, all of the things. And when you sell it, dine out on that place. Like, that's what you take to your next listing appointment. And if you control the conversation and you have just enough confidence to, the fake it till you make it, even if that's what you have to prescribe to, if you have just enough confidence to kind of control the conversation in a listing appointment, and you're showing them what you did with this listing, that they don't know that that's the only listing you've ever had, they don't care. They're not going to ask, well, okay, that was good for that listing, but how about your previous other 6? They're not going to ask you, because they're going to be so impressed with what they saw for that one listing that they're on to other questions that they have for you. So
I love that. And newer brokers, remember too, that you can almost tell me any industry that you are in prior to real estate, and I will find a connection. I will find a connection for you to rely on to be able to say, well, I haven't sold a lot of houses yet. Here's what I do know. Here's what I'm good at. And it's listening, it's customer service. I can work my ass off for you. And what I know is that I've got a team of people behind me that can do the details of selling houses. But what you can't phone in is all the other skills I'm bringing to the table right now. So I might not have, 50 listings in this area, but what you won't get out of that 50 listing agent is what I'm going to provide for you. And here's where that comes from. And maybe that's pizza delivery. Maybe that's whatever. You tell me an industry, I'll figure out how to make it connect. So use that confidence of your background is going to serve you in real estate, even if it's brand new, right? You don't have to have that track record yet. I love it.
Absolutely.
Well, good. We're going to wind down here for a minute, but my favorite question to my clients and also in my podcast interviews is what else? What else do we want to hear from you, Cherie? I'm so grateful for you being on the show today. This has been super fun. I hope it's been fun for you. Just chatting and catching up with you.
It's so fun. Well, here's just a funny side note really quick is because Jen, I could literally talk about real estate all day. And when I was in labor at the hospital, and in a bathtub, I don't know if it's too much of a share, but it comforted me. It was my happy place to just talk about real estate. And so the nurses knew that I was a real estate agent, and one of them was in a transaction and was like in the building inspection contingency phase and was like, well, can I, pick your brain? And I was like, yeah, fire away. And I was just laying there, just like talking about real estate. And it calmed me so down. But, say that I love this business because I can be the age that I am as a woman and be still killing the game if I want, and I do want. And I never, like I said before, I never take this business for granted. So always looking for ways to keep myself interested even. So for example, mark my words on this, since I love staging places and presenting places to evoke an emotion, to connect people when they set foot into a place. I'll one day replicate to a T the kitchen that was in the movie It's Complicated, Nora Ephron movie It's Complicated.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember the name of her designer, but it was a woman who did all of her sets. And if you Google, the It's Complicated kitchen, it evokes so much just looking at it, and an island, and it's got a window that's a certain way. And anyway, the day I get a listing that has a similar layout, I will literally go and procure every single thing in the photo to replicate it. And then I will make a big stink out of it. I will be hyperbolic about it in social media. I'll be like, hey, oh my gosh, I'm so obsessed that I replicated this. Come see it, or something like that. I do believe that one good photo of anything can sell anything. So I'm always trying to make that one photo that stops you when you're scrolling. And you stop and you walk inside that photo. Or when you physically get to the property, I want one space in the house to make you stop. And I want you to want to take a selfie in that spot. And I want you to post it. And sometimes it's the laundry room. If I get a bunch of vintage pieces and things and I just make it really special, like a really boring vanilla part of a house that you're going to sail through, and I make it really significant, and you stop in your tracks, that's how I get my jollies these days.
I love it. I just wrote down the stop scrolling photo.
Yeah.
That's a great line. Great line. And by the way, there's been so many of them. You can't see this. Well, I'm going to show you because we're on, but here's my notes for today. I've been taking notes. I don't know, but just so much meat in this conversation. And I really am excited for other brokers to hear it and get to learn from you. You do a hell of a business. It's been fun to watch and walk alongside you and sell with you. And I don't even know if we've done a transaction, but let's do. How about that? Let's do.
I think we have. I think we have.
Have we? Okay. Okay, good.
Let's do more.
Another. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Pleasure, Jen. Thank you for all the great questions and providing this space to do it.
Thank you so much for listening in to Pocket Hours. I hope this has been interesting, fun, made you laugh, made you think, spurred you on to do and implement some new things in your business. I appreciate your time and hope this has been a good use of it, period. Now, go be the agent you would hire.